Good morning, everyone. My name is Reuben Franklin. I'm the mobility director for the City of St. Augustine. Through my presentation today, first I'd like to say thanks for the opportunity to come and be part of the panel. And I'm hopefully through my presentation give you a perspective of how, as a mobility director for the city, I'm looking at mobility as a service as a very useful tool for our citizens and a way that we're going to actually change how people get around our small city. Just a show of hands, does anybody know where the city of St. Augustine is at or located or familiar with?
Grew up in Jacksonville Beach, know it well.
All right, good. Sounds good. The city of St. Augustine is located in Northeast Florida. It's about a 40 to 45 minute drive south from Jacksonville. We are the oldest continuously occupied settlement in the United States, founded in 1565. How I came to this position, I was an engineer in our public works department. I'm a professional engineer, graduated from University of Florida with a bachelor's in civil engineering. And we were all consolidated. So in our public works department, our city's only 14,000 residents. We're a tourism economy. So with 14,000 residents, about 12 square miles is what incorporates our city limits. We get about 6 million visitors a year that come through the city of St. Augustine. One thing that we're very lucky looking from a transportation point is we've been around long enough where the city was designed before there were motor vehicles, so we're constrained with right of way. We never had the option when traffic congestion was reaching points where you would in other areas look at expanding roadways in order to add capacity and turn lanes. We never had that option. So we do have constrained right-of-ways. And in a way, hindsight looking back, that is positioned us in a really good way to start to use this concept of mobility as a service in the city. So in 2014, we did a visioning plan, and mobility at the time bubbled up to the surface from our constituents that was one of the pressing issues for the city of St. Augustine. We get gridlocked with traffic congestion. Our historic neighborhoods, usually there's only one way in and one way out of the neighborhood, and it's a state road. And in our very busy times of year, it is bumper to bumper traffic. And that has been one of the main complaints that we get, and complaints I'm sure cities across the U.S. get as well. So from that, we created a mobility office, new term. Nobody really knows what it means in the public. I get questions all the time, what's mobility? The way I always answer it is it's giving you options to move around, walking, scooters, slow speed electric vehicles, your personal motor vehicle. In Northeast Florida, we're very car dependent. We did a study in the city of St. Augustine, and about 95% of the roadway is utilized by personal motor vehicle. Some of that capacities of the rest of the 5% is taken up by trolleys that we have that sell tours, and they take tourists and citizens along the city roads. So what we ended up doing was we developed a mobility strategy for the city of St. Augustine. These are the tenets of that strategy, and kind of the Smart Cities initiative lays on top of all of that, where we're really evaluating what technologies are out there, how can it benefit our citizens, is it providing an efficiency in a city process, and then also the customer service level, is it providing better customer service for the city? And so with all of these, I always tell people I'm in no delusion that people are going to use their motor vehicle for the time being to get to the city. So I always say that we're striving to be a park once community, where we develop systems where people can park on the periphery of our downtown urban core, our historic district, and then use other means of transportation to get into the city. These are a couple of projects I just want to show you. We've been working at this for quite a while, and I'll tell you one of the biggest challenges is when we're looking at a public space, how do you convince people to remove on-street parking to create a better public space for citizens, for a livable city? And so this was one of the first projects we did. This is Avonlea Street. And you can see here, this was, I believe it was in 2010. There was on-street parking, small street. We removed the on-street parking and created a space for on-street dining instead. Our citizens and the businesses were very reluctant to do that. It was very hard to go from that to this. But today it's one of the most popular streets in the city of St. Augustine. And I'm building towards, the whole idea is that what we want to do is take away those parking spaces in the internal historic area, keep them on the periphery, and then create public spaces like this, which we feel is what's going to keep our city vibrant and attractive for residents and visitors. So this is just another picture of that, and designed with pedestrians in mind. So that first and last mile, at the end of the day, we want to be a walkable community with vibrant streets, on-street dining, restaurants and shops facing our city streets. And I'll show you a couple of examples of where we're going with that as well. These are just a couple of projects. So this was a seawall, and this is one of the oldest seawalls in the U.S. This was built by the Army Corps of Engineers, some of their first engineering graduates. And in the background is the Bridge of Lions. And so we took this and created another key tenet for the city is historic preservation. So we just don't rip out that old seawall and put a brand new one in. We actually preserved it by capping it and then creating a pedestrian space, a promenade of 12 feet out where we built the actual new seawall. So it created another great public space. And then it also preserved a old historic seawall that has a lot of value to our community. One interesting thing that we've done is so this is the city of St. Augustine, Bayfront. This is our Bridge of Lions. This is the fort. We have a large parking garage back here. This was back when 3D models have gotten a lot better than this, but this was our first stake back in 2012 of developing a 3D model to start to look at our streets. This was with Paul S. Sarbanes Transit and Parks grant, and it was all about looking at how people are circulating in this historic district here. We did not go there. The plans were very big of creating a really nice public space and linear bayfront or waterside park here. Our community at the time, it was too big of a goal, and we had just finished construction of the Bridge of Lions, so our community and businesses had construction fatigue, so that never launched. But one thing that did launch, this is our fort here, Bayfront, Bridge of Lions, was this idea of creating a historic downtown streetscapes and this idea of shared use spaces. So what we ultimately ended up doing was developing curbless streets. So really street where there is no definitive curb line between a pedestrian and motor vehicle space. And so this is an example. Another example that we have accomplished, which was, here's Hippolyta Street. This is internal to our historic district. Right here, where we actually removed on-street parking, did a little term that now is called tactical urbanism, where we had removed that on-street parking, kind of put these bollards up to create a little pedestrian path, but ultimately with the Curbless Street design guidelines created a space where motor vehicles are still allowed on the street, and they go very slowly. You wouldn't be comfortable going more than 5 miles an hour if you do hit the gas on the street. I question your judgment, but but where we're going with this is, here's around our plaza. This is the base of the Bridge of Lions, this wonderful public space here. And this is Cathedral Street right here. And Cathedral Street is dominated by the personal motor vehicle. We have parking on both sides of the street and 2 lanes, so 4 lanes of traffic. And then on top of that, we have this beautiful basilica that in other great cities, typically a basilica like this is anchored right on the public plaza. So we can't get all the way there. We still need motor vehicles as a thoroughfare here, but we are contemplating the idea of flexible street designs where we have hydraulic bollards where we might put these up and down during certain times of the day and make these streets pedestrian only, but at other times still allow motor vehicles on the streets. So this is kind of a concept of that, where this would be the mixed mode and then pedestrian mode. And how does that fit into mobility as a service from my perspective? Well, the whole idea with this is the city has, one of the things we have complete control over is our parking. And so the idea is to develop a parking system that we can economically disincentivize people from using our closest parking spaces in our downtown district, keep them on the outside, and then use these first last mile options to get in, whether you choose a bike share, maybe in the future a scooter, and maybe hopefully soon an AV automated vehicle that's like a shuttle from what I'll call a mobility hub. So these mobility hubs, we're looking at stationing kind of in a triangular manner around the city limits, where if you have a motor vehicle, you'd come, you'd park, and then from there you'd use a service to get into our historic district. So one of the first that we're doing is this bike share program that I'm very excited about. We did put an RFP, request for proposals, out, and that's how we contracted with Gotcha Ride. And so we're in the throes of launching our first bike share program. This actually bubbled up from, and I was talking to Andy about this, bubbled up from the necessity of it, for the need for it, and the use of it, and not because it was a popular idea that one of our commissioners had. So this is kind of an idea of where these biking locations or hubs will be stationed. So this is the city of St. Augustine. That's the fort right there. We have a big parking garage, an 1,148 space parking garage here. Typically, our parking system gets overloaded. The garage on a Saturday will close because it's full, and all of our on-street parking, which is about 600 spaces, is at capacity. So right now we're developing a plan to put what I'll call a mobility-oriented development, kind of anchored right here. This is US 1. And so the idea here would have this and the garage here, and then to start to contract for mobility services to promote parking here to get into our historic area. And the same thing with our island here, to kind of have a cap here. But one of the hesitations on our side is also thinking into the future of the investment of expensive parking facilities when actually they may not even need to be utilized in the future. And so we are taking care to think of what different uses those garages might take in the future as well. And one of the things we're looking at is private-public partnerships, where we might do like a long-term lease on a garage, and then after that it could be developed into something different, residential or more retail. I think city of Tampa is looking at that, with keeping the drive aisles for the garages on the periphery of the garage instead of being internal to the structure. One other thing we're doing is we're really rethinking our infrastructure and how we're utilizing that space. So, for instance, something like this here, this is a neighborhood street that has on-street parking on both sides. Well, can we take away the on-street parking and create like a low-speed vehicle, pedestrian, bike shared path in the future? So we're also looking at this. As far as intelligent transportation systems go, DOT, we are looking at this dynamic message signage. So if we can get people the message out of how to park on the periphery with options of getting in, we're in discussions with DOT. This was a project that was launched and installed and now is complete, where we actually have the Bridge of Lions is a drawbridge. It goes up. And so DOT actually installed these signals at key points where you can actually choose to go around the city. This sign will flash when the bridge is up. So hopefully you choose a different way to get around the city. We're also looking at non-motorized trails. This is a big project that's funded by DOT, which is the St. Johns River to Sea Loop. It's a 260-mile non-motorized trail loop that would connect the surrounding counties. But this is the city of St. Augustine, and they want to try to find a way to get through St. Augustine. So again, this is where our mobility hub would be located. So in that regard, with our bike share, somebody could choose to even head out this way with a bike share or rental. And this is farmland out here. And the whole idea with this part of the loop is to promote agritourism. So you might even get development that spurs up here with promoting, with the creation of this trail. One of the unique things with the city, I'm involved with our transportation planning organization, the TPO. Our TPO, they're also known as metropolitan planning organizations. Ours is actually is the 4 surrounding counties, Duval County, Nassau, Clay, and St. Johns County. And they've developed a smart regions plan, which we're a part of. So these are some of the things that we're looking at. We're in the throes of installing electric charging stations, smart parking, and commercial delivery. And this fits in with mobility as a service, is starting to rethink our curbside management. One key point for the city is that parking is actually one of our biggest revenues for the city of St. Augustine. And so the idea that we're thinking about is in the future, we might see this revenue stream almost disappear because people are coming into the city using other modes of transportation and other options. And so we're starting to rethink of how we might manage our curbside with pickup drop-offs and things of that nature. But one of the things I am very excited about for our city that I think could have a huge impact is the idea of automation and having kind of AV shuttles that might be able to go and pick up folks from these locations and get them around more seamlessly in a slow speed environment. I know that there's a parking session after this, but we are in the throes. We just launched our own smart parking system. And again, this is important from my perspective because this is these parking policies is what I believe is going to drive folks to use these other alternative modes of transportation. So there's nothing that's going to stop you from coming in and parking, but you might have to pay a much higher cost if you're going to come into the historic downtown limits of the city versus parking on the outside and using another mode of transportation to get in. We are also doing live parking data analytics. I'm doing this so I can create a case to our elected officials, our city commissioners, of why we would instill these policies. And that's an important part. This is our parking garage where we have license plate reader cameras that are tracking cars in and out of the facility, and some parking data analytics. That being said, one of the big things with the city is we are unique in the fact that we have not been able to expand our roadways for the most part. We have slow speeds, 25 mile per hour is the max speed in the historic district. We're even contemplating going to slower speeds than that, 20, maybe even 15 miles per hour. And I'll just leave to open the discussion up. We're about to embark on our main corridor, King Street. And I'll go back and show you this. So this is King Street right here. It's our main entry corridor. So we have 3 entry corridors into the city: King Street, Anastasia Boulevard, and San Marco Avenue. They're all state roads, so it's governed by the FDOT. But one of the things we're envisioning with this is, can we create a slow speed vehicle lane that might accommodate scooters, might accommodate EV slow speed vehicles, might accommodate our trolleys that are taking tour passengers on it. Can we remove one lane of traffic and install this slow speed lane as part of that, as a way to facilitate movement and keep these vehicles off of these devices off of sidewalks, which we really want to keep for our pedestrian movement back and forth. I'll leave you with 2 things that I've learned, or 3 things that I've learned so far as being the mobility director for the past 2 years with the city of St. Augustine. One, it is a challenge communicating to the public all of the changes that are occurring and how quickly they are occurring. The second is, when we engage with tech companies, Gotcha was pretty good. And then also Passport Labs is our parking company that we launched a mobile parking app with. Florida has very open public record laws, so we've come down to our city attorney and other companies' attorneys looking out for their best interests have butted heads over data. What is a public record? What isn't a public record? So we've had to, things that I thought would be a lot easier to move forward were not so easy when we got into the real weeds and details of it. And that's something that I keep in mind as we move forward with other vendors that come in that want to provide their services as well. And then one thing that I've gotten from our public too is what measures are in place to ensure their personal identification information and things of that nature. Just being a public entity, what have I done to ensure that they're them signing up for this app or this new service that's coming in, that their information's protected. With that being said, it's a very, very exciting future, and I'm looking forward to using these mobility services as a tool to transform how people get around our historic city. And very happy that we have a TPO that has a vision for a smart region that we're a part of as well. So with that, I'll conclude my discussion.
Thanks, Reuben. That was great.